Hey everyone, it's Elo. I hope that you're doing well. I'm a little nervous because I haven't been able to record in a while, but I'm also really excited. And this topic has been on my mind for probably months now. I've kind of lost track of time lately, but it is something that is obviously very important to me and something that I do want to put out there, not just for myself, but because of the amount of people, you guys, some of you guys, who have commented on my previous videos about autism and have just really, for lack of a better expression, moved me with your comments, and it has shown me that talking about this topic, even if it gets uncomfortable or difficult, is useful to other people and helps people like me feel more accepted and more empowered. And those are very important things to me because I think that they are fundamental human rights, really. So anyway, getting into it, maybe 7 or 8 months ago now, it's been a while, I read an article on Yahoo news page or whatever, don't judge me, and in this article there was a woman with autism who was talking about the fact that someone, a doctor, told her that she couldn't be autistic because of her job. She was in the sex work industry, not doing like adult films or anything, but if my memory serves me correctly, she was having one-on-one discussions and meetups with people. And in reading her article, it really made me feel a lot better because I have now run into multiple situations in which people who barely know me try to undiagnose me, which is a very confusing thing for me because I don't understand what the goal is, and I guess that's the bottom line. I don't understand why people say these things. And it made me feel good to read that another female, very similar to myself by the sounds of it, has had the same problem. And so I wanted to share this problem with all of you because maybe it's happened to you before already, and maybe it's going to happen to you. And believe me when I say it's an incredibly upsetting and unsettling feeling. So just as a quick recap, I did not grow up knowing that I was on the autism spectrum. I always thought I was different. I had a lot of the classic mannerisms and behaviors, signs, if you will, looking back. But at the time, I didn't have the resources, and nobody really went forward with any diagnosis for me. I did have speech therapy in elementary school, I did and still do struggle with numbers, and like spatial awareness. But other than that, I did pretty well. In terms of the main things that people think of when they think of whether or not a child is autistic, they're like, oh, did they meet the milestones? Did they do this, that, the other thing? Well, I wasn't so off track. I suppose that my parents, I guess, were like alarmed to do something about it. So, whatever the case, I was very sick when I was a baby. Could not eat or drink milk and all that. Had an upset stomach from the time I was born. I don't obviously know this, but I was told that I went back to the hospital shortly after I was born because I was so sick and not keeping food down and all that kind of stuff. And stomach problems are big component for autistic people, and I've still had those to this day. I constantly have we'll just say stomach issues in general, because it really varies, and I've tried all different kinds of things to mitigate that, but it's been a very consistent problem in my life. The reason why I'm saying all of this is because I guess just a little bit of background, but also because I think it's important for later in the story. So when I was in my middle school years, I started having a lot of trouble socially. I ended up switching schools because of that, and I just had my fair share of issues, and I also started feeling just bad, really bad. So I started going to the doctor a lot, and from middle school into high school, I got my blood drawn so many times. I was put on a bunch of different medications. I was not doing great, and there was never any one reason. There was never any one thing that I was told this is what you should be trying to treat. And I really want to frame it that way because I don't want to think of it as, and I don't want any of you to think of it as what is my problem per se, because I just think that puts you in the wrong state of mind for things. And I also have come to believe that in the right setting, a lot of our supposed problems are not problems at all. So yeah, I took lithium nose sprays. I took all kinds of drugs that were messing with different chemicals in my body, not just your traditional serotonin, dopamine stuff. My dad put me on all kinds of strange medicines that were for thyroid problems, and just trust me when I say that I felt like a lab rat for a while there, trying to solve the things that were really beginning to plague me in my life and cause me the inability to function normally. Things got worse and compounded early on in high school, and I became incredibly depressed. I put on a lot of weight. I was eating like crap. Things just got worse. I started living an unhealthy lifestyle that was kind of mirroring how I was feeling, and things just kind of got out of control. Well, eventually, I was in therapy starting in the 10th grade, so I was 14 or 15 years old, and mainly from there on out, it was constantly being told, like, you have major depressive disorder, you have generalized anxiety disorder, you have obsessive compulsive personality disorder, you have, I just got one diagnosis after the other, and I was just thinking to myself, like, how is this possible? Like, how do I have 5 different major mental illnesses? Like, that just doesn't really make sense to me. What are the odds of that? It just didn't feel right, I guess. And it never really seemed to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, in my opinion. That being said, I still kind of did what I was told. I went on a bunch of different medications again, this time specifically treating anxiety and depression. I had an incident the year after I graduated high school, and I ended up in a inpatient medical facility, we'll say, and stayed there for a length of time. And in there, they tried to say, oh, well, you're bipolar. So I'm like, okay, this is a lot. I don't know what's going on. I'm taking all these medicines. What's this doing to my body? Like, is any of this really helping me? I don't feel better. Why don't I feel better after all this time? And it was very frustrating. And for any of you who have been through or are going through the same thing, like, it's even more depressing when you're looking for help and just continuously feeling like you're not getting it. You're trying, and people might even genuinely be trying to help you, but it's just not, like, the answer. And that's not to say that there's one big bad thing out there that, controls your fate and can cure you or save you or, fix all of your problems. It's just a lot easier to navigate the world when you understand the world and yourself better. And I think that just intuitively makes sense. You can't play the game if you don't know the rules, and knowing the rules is so incredibly helpful. So I was still in therapy all these years later. I was in my late 20s by this point, and I went in for like an annual just assessment. I don't really know what they call them, but every once in a while, usually every year, but sometimes every other year, my various therapists would have me go to another type of doctor who would run a bunch of tests on me, checking for things like schizophrenia, bipolar, etc. That particular year in my late 20s, I went and saw this guy named Dr. Peterson, and I filled out a questionnaire that was like 800 questions, and I did all these tests that took so long, and I thought that was that. I was like, okay, bye, nice to meet you. I've done this before. It's not a big deal. I'm gonna continue on with my life. Well, he had called me back and was like, hey, you need to come back in. Like, okay, this is different, but all right. So I go back in and we do another slew of tests. And after all of this is said and done, this is the doctor who says, I believe you're on the autism spectrum. Here's why. Here's, your kind of almost type. It says that you have symptoms and behaviors that are consistent with Asperger's, explained all that to me, blah, blah, blah. And it was very shocking to me. And I may have mentioned this in one of my previous videos, I believe I did, but I was kind of ashamed at first, especially because autism and autistic was starting to become the new retarded in terms of just like gamers talking and like people talking. They call things retarded. Well, they started calling everyone autistic and saying all these things, and so it felt really shitty at first because I was like, oh man, now I'm associated with this thing that everyone is constantly casting in a negative light, and what does this mean about me, etc. But it also prompted me to start doing some research, and when I did do that research, I felt awesome because I realized, like, this is it. Finally, after all this time, I get it. Like, this makes so much sense. It explains and encompasses every single stupid side effect and problem that I've had since I was little, since I was born, from the stomach stuff all the way through all of my social problems, all of my anxiety, depression, all of the, poor behaviors, let's say, that I dealt with, and just extremes that didn't seem normal compared to my peers. I really became very empowered after learning about that stuff because I got it. And I felt like I finally had a community of people that I knew would understand me. And that feels really good, regardless of what it's about in your life. Human beings like that sense, like I was saying earlier, of acceptance and empowerment. And getting that diagnosis gave me those things. So, fast forward a number of years, I don't go around wearing a shirt that says I'm autistic. I don't introduce myself and tell people I'm on the autism spectrum unless it pertains to the situation. If I'm going into a situation that I know I'm probably going to have a strong reaction to, I'm going to cry, I'm going to be very uncomfortable, I might shut down, I might not talk, I might have, just incredible anxiety or sadness or whatever, I will tell the person just so that they're not like, what's going on? And in that case, I think of it as no different than someone's like telling someone, hey, I'm epileptic and this might trigger me, kind of thing. Like, you don't want to just be having a seizure in front of someone who doesn't know that about you. So in the right environment, if I'm going for a procedure at the doctor's office or, something that I'm scared of or whatever, I will tell that to the appropriate person or persons. However, aside from that, it's not something that I just share with the world. However, in choice situations, that information does come up. And sometimes you'll get people who you'll tell them, like, yeah, I'm on the autism spectrum, actually. And then in my mind, I'm just like moving on to the next thing. And then they'll be like, I don't think so. Okay. What do you mean you don't think so? Like, I don't want to know why they don't think so because it doesn't matter to me. And frankly, I find it very offensive. However, you just have to sit there and think, like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, what do you mean you don't think so? It's not something that you get to have an opinion on. One of the people who actually told me this was my most recent therapist, who he and I are no longer seeing each other, and it's not because of this. This was very early on, literally the first day that I met him, that like 15 minutes into our conversation that came up, and he just said, I don't think so. I'm like, cool, good for you. Like, it pissed me off a lot, and we talked about it multiple times. I think, he was a fellow at the time, so I was getting free therapy through the local school by seeing a student who was, growing into their doctorate. And I'm not saying that, it's because he was young and he didn't know anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, I think that without really being absorbed into the sphere of autism itself, it's very difficult to understand that not all autistic people are alike, and that there are really different subcategories within the autism spectrum, because it is a spectrum. Say it with me. So females particularly tend to not give off that impression, especially at first glance, I guess you might say, because we're notoriously good at what's called masking, which is essentially picking up on the behaviors that we're supposed to do and emulating them in order to avoid ridicule. So after years and years of doing that myself and not really understanding what it meant or what it was, by the time I met this therapist, I knew all of that about myself already. And I didn't present it to him as I might be autistic. I just told him I'm on the autism spectrum. It's like, I don't think so. Okay, sure. Later on down the line, he said to me, and I think that this is very important for anyone, that there's a joke in the psychotherapy kind of sphere that you can get 5 different therapists in a room and have them all see the same patient, and you'll come up with 5 different diagnoses. And I think that that is super important, and I want that to kind of be the crux of my point for this video. Regardless of who this person is, what their status is, if they're a doctor, a therapist, if they're a life coach, or whatever, it doesn't matter. No one else knows what it feels like to be you. I knew in my gut all of those years that the things that I was being told I had, those, just major depressive disorder, just generalized anxiety, oh, you have both, you have bipolar, etc. I knew that those things weren't right, because when I read about them and learned about them, it just didn't feel like it made sense. When I read about autism, it was a completely different experience for me. It made sense in more ways than I ever would have imagined. I could never have pulled that out of my own knowledge or intellect. I never would have come to that conclusion, and I was highly undereducated about autism. So whether you're on the autism spectrum, you have ADD, ADHD, you're depressed, you have an anxiety disorder, whatever it is, even doctors are not going to be able to know for sure with a lot of those things. You're the one person who's living as you and feeling what you feel. You have all of your memories, your experiences, you know your motivations. If you're in touch with yourself at all, you will know if that thing is right or not. And that is what gives it weight, in my opinion, after all of these years. You know, if you want to sit there and say, oh, well, every doctor is going to come up with a different diagnosis. Okay, well, this is what makes the one matter. It's you. Do you truly and genuinely connect with that, you know, verbiage, the things that are presented to you as this is what this is? Do you relate to that or not? And obviously you don't have to fit every single checkbox perfectly, but if you are fitting 95% of them and you've never done that before, come on, like, so it really lit me up when he said that. And you know, he was trying to psychoanalyze me and telling me like that I just wanted to belong somewhere, essentially, and that finding the autism community was like perfect for me because, you know, it made me feel like my long time being misunderstood was finally understood, kind of thing. Which to me doesn't even make sense, because if I wanted to be misunderstood, why would I feel so cemented to the autism community? Because naturally that makes me very understood. I don't know, whatever. So that's not the only instance though. I also recently, this is just one of a couple others, had a massage with this person. Not my typical massage therapist, if you're watching. I went and saw this other guy for essentially research purposes. I've been trying to, when I have the capital and time, get massages from all kinds of people, because I've been reading that that's incredibly important to learning and growing as a massage therapist. So I went to this guy, and you know, in general, it was a very transformative and positive experience. It really mattered to me on an emotional level. So I don't regret going at all, and I would consider it a net positive experience. That being said, he asked me, I was filling out the paperwork ahead of time. And I just mentioned on there that I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm very, you know, as a result, I'm very sensitive to lights and smells and things like that, because that pertains, again, to the massage environment. A lot of therapists will put certain essential oils and things really close to your face, and they can make me feel really bad. So I wanted to get that information out there. Well, he kind of pried about that a certain length into the massage, and I gave him the barest Cliff Notes version, and he really launched into a whole thing about how he doesn't think that I am autistic because math and spatial awareness are already things that females aren't that good at, and therefore I was probably just having some sort of a mental block with those things, yada yada. There's 30 years worth of other shit that, well, 31 really, that I didn't say. I was just being polite in my answer and giving, like I said, a very surface level kind of response to explain. And having known me for 10 minutes and having that information he felt like he had the right to tell me that it wasn't true. Why? If you're out there and you've done this to someone, please leave me a comment and let me know why. Why do you feel the need to do that? What is it doing for you? Because I'm not asking to be fixed. I'm not asking for answers or guidance. I'm happy and comfortable in who I am, and I know what I know for myself. And let's say by some crazy whatever, I'm not on the autism spectrum at all. I'm just totally wrong. All of these experiences are just coincidence, and the million things that weave me into all of the empirical data regarding autism are just coincidence, okay? Regardless, if that's something that has helped me and connected with me, why would you want to take that away anyway? Like, what is it doing for you? I don't understand that. I asked Rich what he thinks, and the only thing he could really come up with is that maybe people kind of almost get uncomfortable with the information, and they want to, like, they think that they're making it better by telling you, like, oh no, you're not, you're fine, kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it was ridiculous. And these choice occasions that have happened really bothered me for a while, because it felt like someone was trying to take a part of my identity and tell me that it's not real. And I remember I said this to my therapist, like, in the heat of the moment too, like, it's like trying to tell me that my eyes aren't gray. Like, you can't convince me otherwise. You can tell me sometimes they look blue and sometimes they look green, but if you tell me that my eyes are brown, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And that's the part that's frustrating, is having someone look you in the face and be like, actually, you're not white, you're not a girl, you're not 5'3", you don't have gray eyes. Like, these are all just facts. Like, they're not things that are up for debate. So it's frustrating. On top of which, you're like, who the F are you, knowing me for 10 minutes of my 31 years of existence, telling me who I am or I am not? You don't know what I've been through, or how I got here, or why I act the way that I do, etc. So that all being said, looping back around to the Yahoo article, this woman explained, she had a doctor tell her, no, I don't think that's right. And this was another human being. This doctor was another human being who just didn't get it, and thought, well, surely no autistic person would ever be in the sex work industry. When really, it was an excellent position for her, and this is what she explained in the article as well, because she got to have close one-on-one relationships with people while making money, and not having to deal with any of the things that were, I don't know what the word is that I'm trying to use here. For example, if she didn't like bright lights and loud sounds, she's not having to go to the club. She's staying with this person, or on the phone with this person, or talking to this person in an atmosphere that suits her preferences and what she is able to tolerate and what feels good to her. autistic people are just as capable as anyone else of being sexual beings as well. So I don't know if this doctor thought, surely no one with autism bugs. Like, that's just ridiculous. Again, it just makes no sense. But I really, really just loved reading that article because it was so affirming to me, and it made me feel, again, just like, it reminded me, like, Elo, don't doubt yourself. You know, and you've struggled a lot with this to get to this point where you're confident in yourself and you've turned things around so much, and you're not a victim. You are the opposite. You're like a champion of this, and you are utilizing information to your advantage and becoming a better human being for it. So it was very important for me to put all this into video because I want to very strongly let any of you out there know not to listen to people based on their whims, whether or not they have a PhD, whether or not they've been your best friend for a really long time. Like, it doesn't matter what their relevance to your life is. You're the one who knows how you feel. I was fortunate to be 27 and have a doctor, notice these things, pay enough attention to the details of our short interactions. They were really hours long, but you get my point. Short in the grand scheme of things. And that was his job, was to pay attention to those specific details and connect the dots. And that's what he did. And I'm so grateful that I had that experience because it changed me for the better. And ever since then, I've not been scrambling around trying to figure out what's wrong with me. I don't feel that way anymore. And for that alone, fuck anyone who wants to sit here and tell me I am this or I'm not that. Don't undiagnose people. If someone tells you they're on the autism spectrum, they have ADD, they have ADHD, they're colorblind, they can't visualize things in their head, they're dyslexic, whatever the case is, you don't fucking know any better. You don't. So it's never, ever your position to say otherwise. If you know this person really well and you read about something and you're like, that sounds like my friend, you can bring this stuff up to them and say, hey, I want you to read this article because it reminded me of you. But don't sit there and tell them, like, actually, I don't think that you have that, particular ailment. I believe that you believe whatever the hell you want to believe. It's irrelevant to that person. Like, plain and simple. So with that all out of the way, I also wanted to get to these questions, which I've had on my phone since December 27th, 2019. So I apologize to Caitlin Sitt. I don't know if I'm saying that right. She asked me these questions 2 years ago, and I never answered them because I hadn't really made the proper type of follow-up video, which I said I was going to. So question number 1, how has your experience with autism affected employment for you as well as academic life? Great question, and this does kind of loop into the whole employment thing that I was talking about with the aforementioned sex worker. So for me, I have not done sex work. I have, though, done a lot of similar jobs in the sense that they are freelanced, contracted. I kind of always looked for jobs that I I felt like I could handle. Early on in my teens, I started waitressing at an old folks' home because one of my friends in school just kind of swept me into the job. I almost didn't like have a choice. She just got me this job, and I was terrified, but I am very diligent and I have an excellent memory, so it actually ended up being a really easy job for me. Interacting with people kind of sucked, but old people are fun and they're different than interacting with people your own age or something. So it ended up working out really great for me, and so I built that skill set of being a really good waitress, and I was really proud of that, and I still kind of am, because it feels so fluid to me to be a waitress. It's like dancing. It's just something that I feel like is in my bones at this point, and I'm just really good at it. That being said, kitchens are full of boys who want to have sex with you and make you mixtapes, and people who are doing drugs and not a whole lot of ambition. And that's no offense to anyone who is in that life. I was in it for so long and I loved every minute of it. And I took advantage of all of it. But eventually it was just too stressful for me. And I was getting my degree and I was like trying to get jobs or look for jobs that were more relevant to having an English degree. So yeah, I ended up doing things like tutoring. I worked for tutor.com for a really long time, and I tutored at my college. I tutored French, philosophy, English, and I did, like special editing and poetry things. So just really playing to my skill set, but also environment was really important to me. The only time that I had like a 9 to 5 type job, I became so incredibly depressed, even though I was at a very small but very wealthy real estate agency as a receptionist. I hated it. I just absolutely hated every day and every minute of it, and it's just not for me, that feeling of just sitting in one place for 8 hours. I fucking hate it. And when I say that like that makes me want to die, I don't mean that in a joking manner whatsoever. I really do become done with life when I'm pigeonholed into that kind of situation. So, to very directly answer your question, I think when it comes to work, having the right conditions is so important for me, and that's part of the reason why being a massage therapist has been just perfect. And I love it so much because it's dimly lit, there's nice music playing, it's one-on-one, it's very relaxed and calming, and I just wouldn't have it any other way. I love what I do, and I love the atmosphere, and I think that if you are on the autism spectrum and looking for your, career, forget about everything and think about your ideal environment, and then find something that matches with that. As far as my academic life, as I'd mentioned earlier, I did have speech therapy when I was young. I was always in the advanced reading, but I was never a gifted student because I was really bad at math, so I didn't have the full package. I was just a really good reader. And in college, I had disability accommodations, which gave me a quiet place to take my tests and time and a half to take them. I didn't always utilize that, but when I started going to a much tougher school in Virginia, and taking French especially, I really needed it, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I'm really hard on myself, and I see, even though I know that I'm not embarrassed of needing disability accommodations, it's just that I was raised to be perfect, and acknowledging that I needed those things admits that I'm not perfect, especially at academics, which was something that was very important growing up. So nobody take offense to that statement whatsoever. It's just my old kind of long time shit coming out when I say that. Disability accommodations actually ruled, and I am very thankful that that was an option for me. Aside from that, I did really well in everything that wasn't math related. I took remedial math in college and never took another math class after that. I never took calculus or anything, trigonometry, all of those like brainy maths that people were taking in high school. That was not for me. I also kind of sucked at like history and geology because I have a really, really good memory, but I didn't know what to memorize in either of those subjects, and they just tell you so much random shit. Like, why? I don't know. I never was looking at the big overarching concepts. I'm much more detail oriented, so I always just missed out on the bigger picture. Other than that, though, I didn't skip a grade. I didn't get held back either. I was just kind of on a relatively normal trajectory, and I was usually top of my class somewhere, and I worked really hard, and yeah. So, question 2, how has misophonia impacted you? It's also a great question. So, I actually like crunching sounds. They don't bother me at all. If someone's eating like a potato chip, or even like mukbang ASMR that's crunchy, I'm here for it. You want to eat a Rice Krispie treat in my ear? Fine, that's cool. It's like wet, slurping, just any kind of slimy or wet noise I cannot stand, to the point where if I'm like eating next to Rich, like I need the television to be on before he starts eating, because I just can't. It makes me want to punch him in the face immediately. Like, it's very difficult for me to hold back. So that's in terms of just the eating sounds. I also do have certain sounds that really bother me, and they make my teeth, like, I don't know why this is. There are certain textures and certain sounds that really bother my teeth, and just make me want to like bite something substantial, or I don't know. Hopefully that answered the question well enough. I have some sounds that I just cannot fucking stand for the life of me, and they make me like literally angry. Also just loud stuff in general, and the worst for me in general, day-to-day life, is when people are having more than one conversation at a time. I hate it. I can't stand it. Even if I'm not a part of any of the conversations, I just don't do well with that. third question was, did diagnosis for you come as more of a positive or a negative thing? And I think I've already answered that throughout this video. It was negative at first and it turned into a huge positive. Number 4, in social situations, do you feel like you have to mask certain symptoms and signs? And I briefly touched on this earlier, but yes, 1000% yes. Like I said, I didn't always know what it was called or why I was doing it, but there are a lot of things that I do that feel compulsory based on social norms that I've registered. Even just talking to people, a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? Intonation and the language that I use is actually directly from my mother, because growing up, hers was one of the main voices that I heard, especially when she was talking to other people, like on the telephone, or if I was at work with her and she was talking to, a client or something like that. A lot of my intonation and the things that I say still reflect that. And it's just similar with other situations as well. Like, a recent example, Bridge asked me if I wanted to do something, and I was like, no thank you. But I guess I said it just kind of like, no thank you, very like monotone, and it was offensive apparently. And then once he told me like that it was offensive, I was like, okay, what should I have said then? And he said, it's okay, it's just the way that you said it, and told me that I should have said it like, no thank you. Much more high-pitched and with a little no thank you curve thing to it. So that's the kind of shit that I catalog in my head and say like, okay, next time there's a similar situation, I need to say it like this. And to me, that's what masking mainly is just learning these little like seeming rules, and a lot of the times it just means keeping my mouth shut because there's a lot of stuff that I would say that I've learned either annoys people, or they don't care, or it makes me seem weird. So that's kind of sad, but I stay quiet a lot of the times in order to avoid that ridicule, bullying, and ostracization. So, and question number 5, what do you think could help someone differentiate between ASD and social anxiety? Ooh, that's a great question. So this is tough because naturally a lot of the people who are on the autism spectrum have social anxiety. And I think, to be fair, social anxiety has become a very widespread thing, especially in recent years. I do think that mental health illness, is that the way to say that? Whatever, you get what I'm saying. It has been on the rise, and for a long time I've wondered, is it because of the shit we're eating, our lifestyle, technology, all of these things kind of combined? Whatever the case, I do think that more people are presenting with unhealthy mindsets and poor behaviors, and I do think that lack of normal socialization is a huge component of that. So I think that a lot of people now have social anxiety, and I don't think that anyone's blowing it out of proportion when they say that. And I've noticed some similarities as well. So a lot of the times when you're experiencing social anxiety, there are some key things that happen when you're about to be around people. or you are around people, you become kind of irrational and panicked. You're not going to like it if the plans get changed. You want to know as much information and have as much control in that situation as you possibly can. It becomes very difficult to just go with the flow and relax. You worry about every little thing about yourself, and you probably play out a million scenarios in your head of people making fun of you, or of you somehow being cast in a negative light. I think the problem with answering this question is that there are so many different facets to being on the autism spectrum. So there's not like one particular thing that I can say, well, if you have social anxiety and a stomach ache, you probably have ASD, not just social anxiety, because anxiety gives you a stomach ache. It can make you incredibly sick to your stomach. Actually, I have firsthand experience of that. So I would just say, if you're confused between the two in any way, or concerned, just read about both. Don't listen to people's personal stories. Like, literally go online and find a more medical article and see which one kind of feels like it pertains to you more, and use that to your advantage. Seek resources that help with those things, and try every day to become more comfortable as yourself. As I've been getting older, I have these burst moments where I'm like, man, I'm really wasting my life on stuff. Like, it's really sad that I care so much about whether or not I'm 125 pounds or 136 pounds. It's really sad that I don't want to go talk to people because of my own insecurities or memories, or things that I'm just imagining happening that aren't even happening. I feel more and more that we waste a lot of time, energy, our sanity, and just our lives just worrying about dumb shit. And it's always stuff that's not even gonna matter in the long run. So I don't know why I'm saying that. I just want to encourage everyone out there, whether or not you're on the autism spectrum or anything else, even if you feel mentally fantastic, just try to put things in perspective more and recognize that it's just not that serious. So I hope that this talk was informative and good, and I'm really looking forward to all of your comments, and I'll see you in my next video.